Hi, it's Jennifer from Shabby Fabrics. I have a project for you today using panels and a chenille cutter, and it makes the cutest rug. So practical, really cute in the house. We made one with the Wilmington collection behind me. This was another one we did out of a cute panel from a Moda Christmas collection. It's really made me look at panels in a different way because I've always thought about them being used primarily in quilts, and now to know there's a fun project to use them for rugs just kind of opens up a whole nother door of possibility. So let's jump right into how do you make this thing. First thing you'll need is 3 of the same panels, 3 identical panels. You'll want a piece of either fusible fleece or a batting, something that's going to be your cushion and add some density and bulk to the rug, and then a coordinating backing fabric, and of course you'll need some binding fabric. We'll be using our flower head pins today from Clover. I don't quilt with patchwork pin, or for the flower head pins, I normally use patchwork pins. But for this project, as you can see, the flat head on the flower head pin is very unique, and for certain applications, it's essential. This is one of those times. Once you determine your panels, you want the bottommost panel to actually be bigger. You're going to need kind of a lane, so to speak, to be using your chenille cutter, and I can go into that later, and I will go into that later. But just for now, what you want to know and keep in mind is that your bottommost panel needs to be bigger than the other 2 that are above it. It's easy for the bottommost panel if you keep the selvage on, and then the 2 panels above, you trim that away. That naturally makes the bottom panel bigger along the width of the fabric. But as far as the length of the fabric here, what we did is we simply sewed a 1.5-inch strip of muslin to either side of that with a 1/4-inch seam allowance and a regular stitch length. You will not be removing this later on. This will become an integral part of your rug. It will be mostly trimmed away when you trim everything up in the end. But this helps us get that panel bigger than the other ones. So enough about that. I've got our bottom panel bigger. We've added a little bit of muslin to the top and to the 2 here, and we've left our selvage on. Now one of the most important things is to stack your panels as perfectly on top of each other as possible. That will give you the clearest picture possible when you chenille your rug. How do you stack one panel on top of the other and on top of the other when I can't see it? That's a great question, and we're going to be showing you that tip and technique using the flower head pins. I'll be looking for you to I'm going to do a close-up. I'll actually do it over in this corner. So let us show you how we get that accomplished. So the first thing you want to do is pick a very prominent place that's easily identifiable in all of the panels. I'm going to pick this corner here where the barn kind of meets the wood, and I'm going to go straight down. Just like this, and I'm kind of feeling that, and I'm going to pull that first panel back, and if I need to make any adjustment, I do it now, right in that corner. And I'm going to roll the next panel up over my hands, and if I need to adjust it ever so slightly, I will. And then I'm going to go straight down, so I'm all the way through to the back. I'm going to bring this back, smooth it out, kind of wiggle, wiggle. My pin is straight down. Don't have your pin at an angle yet. I'm just wanting to make sure I've got that point, and then I'm going to rock this back and slip that through. And of course, that pin's going to lie nice and flat against my panel. You'll continue doing that. Maybe the tip of the cow's nose, maybe one part of the sheep, however you're going to do it. But as you can see, you're pinning frequently. Pin across all of your panel, and then we're going to show you how to get your line going and get yourself established so you can begin sewing your rows. So we're going to pretend everything's already pinned down, and you will draw diagonal lines starting in a corner. Start in one corner of your panel and draw on a 45-degree line. As you know, when something's cut on bias, it has its most stretch possible. One of the things about using the chenille cutter is you want to have kind of a ruffle effect once this is washed and dried. Having the lines drawn and cut on the bias on the 45 degrees gives you the most chance for that. So for that reason, we've drawn our lines on a 45-degree angle. This is where the flower head pins are so important, and why patchwork pins, while they are sharp, absolutely sharp, these are better because as I lie my ruler down, they're not riding up on top of the round head of a patchwork pin. They're lying nice and flat because my flower head pins are flat. They're completely flat. So I just come into my corner, I'm going to have my friction pen, and I just start drawing, bump up the ruler, and then you were to continue drawing. What I love about this is you only need to draw one line. How is that possible that you only need to draw one line? Very simple. You're going to choose your widest presser foot that you have, and you will sew straight down that line, again with a standard stitch length, maybe even just a little bit more. You might, I definitely recommend you use a size 100 needle. I'll be using the Schmetz Super Non-Stick needle because I'm using a fusible fleece product. Anytime I use a fusible anything, I love to use the Super Non-Stick because it's specifically designed and engineered to work well with products that have fusible on the back of them. So for that reason, the size 100 Super Non-Stick is your needle of choice for this particular project. Once you sew this initial line, when you come back to sew the subsequent lines, the width of your presser foot is your guide for the next lane. I'm going to show you that as we proceed over to the sewing machine. I've already sewn these first couple lanes, but I'll show you how you really only need to use the ruler and the friction pen just the one time. And then your machine's presser foot will be your guide for the next. So I'm going to roll this up, and then I'll meet you at the sewing machine, and we're going to sew our next lane together. So you can see we've got lines here. What I'm looking at now is not my needle. I'm looking at this presser foot, the left side, and this line. And as I begin to sew again, that's my guide. That's how I will be paralleling this line. So let's get started. If you come to a pin like this and you can't move it out of the way, go ahead and remove that pin, and it doesn't need to go back. It did its job to hold this section together while you sewed all these lanes. It's all right that you're removing it. You don't need to replace it. As I finish this lane and I cut my stitches, you'll simply turn your project around and stitch back down the other direction. Again, now the right side will be my visual target as it's riding right along the stitching that I just did. And you will continue all the way through that side, and then you'll continue sewing on the opposite side until all of the rows are stitched. We're going to pretend that all of our lanes are stitched. The next step, and of course the part that I've been anxious to show you, is the chenille cutter. That's the magic tool that makes the process happen. It's different than a rotary cutter. A rotary cutter is just like it sounds. It's rotating. A chenille cutter actually does not rotate in its position. It's locked into position and it cuts. So it's different. So when you need to buy a replacement blade for your chenille cutter, you cannot use a standard rotary blade. You need to buy a chenille cutter blade because they are engineered different. And let me show you how they actually work and why they're different. So this is the chenille cutter, and there's two different aspects of this. Like I said, a normal rotary blade rotates throughout the cut. This cut is actually locked in position, and let's just talk about the aspects of this. This is kind of what I would consider the shovel, I suppose. It's what's going to go and feed into the pocket and into the lane. And you can see how this one's a little bit wider, and this one's a little bit wider, and this one's still. So you'll determine which width that you would need by simply coming to your lane and trying to fit this in. So this easily fits. Is that really going to be your best fit? It could be. Is this going to be your best fit? That fits really well. And this fit does not go in at all. I think the smallest one is way too small. There's too much slippage. You want to be able to cut right down that lane. So in this particular project, with the presser foot I'm using, let me try that large one again. I really like the large one because it doesn't give me any kind of wiggle room in there. So once you determine that I want the L, and I just want to, I don't know if you can see that, but it's small, medium, large, and they wrote a LL. I guess that's supposed to be an extra large. Notice how the black says turn to get new edge. That's not us just yet. I'm happy with the blade edge because it's a brand new blade. Turn to select the guide. We're looking for the guide, and we want to be, actually we're on the large, but I just want to show you what happens when you rotate this. Actually, see that dial this way? That's going to mean my blade is now over at the LL. Let's say your project's going to use the small. Just go in the direction of the arrow. Now your blade is positioned to cut only here. Notice these others are not available. There is no blade here. I think this is incredibly well engineered. Very well thought out product. I'm going to go to the L. I like that. Once I start cutting, this blade is not going to rotate. I am going to wear out that portion of the blade. When I want to get a new edge, notice how it says turn to get a new edge? I'm going to simply rotate that, and I get just a slightly different part of that edge, and I'm only cutting here. When I wear that out and I kind of notice it's getting dull, I'll give it one more click and one more click and one more click. I have 22 different shots at this. 22 different little clicks here. So let's go ahead. We're going to go to our lane and we're going to cut a lane. We're on the L where I want to be. This is why you wanted the largest panel to be on the bottom, so that you wouldn't inadvertently cut through all of the panels. This makes sure that your larger panel is absolutely not being cut, only the two above it are. I grab this corner and I'm just going to push, and I'm looking straight up the middle of this lane. And you'll continue cutting these rows of chenille all the way across your entire rug. Now to finish it up, I won't be able to do that with you on camera because I haven't already stitched down and cut these other rows. It's very simple. You'll just do your best to square this up. It's going to be just a little bit, it's not as even, but do the best you can to square that up. And you're going to bind your project before you put that in the washer and the dryer. So completely bind the project, throw that right in the wash. No special washing instructions are needed. Throw that in the dryer, and it's going to chenille it. That's the process. That's the chenille it. And because you cut that on bias, there's not really a lot of thread you need to trim away. And you can continue to wash and dry this project over and over again. So don't worry about babying this. You absolutely use it. That's what it's meant for. So I hope you enjoyed learning how to make the chenille rugs, and I can't wait to see you next time.